Who doesn't know the little Rancilio Silvia? She sent us her big brother, the Rancilio Silvia Pro X machine. And this one is now a dual boiler, while the smaller version was a single boiler. We practiced temperature surfing with it and pretty much decoded the machine for ourselves. And yet, we are truly glad that Rancilio has now stepped up their game with the Silvia Pro X, which offers a dual boiler and includes everything else we have examined thoroughly. And now the results are in this test video. Michael, welcome to the 344th Rancilio Silvia, but this time, for the first time, not a small single boiler espresso machine in a home barista course, but a dual boiler. Have you had the machine in the home barista course before? Yes, I have had it already. Interesting.
Oh yes, absolutely. It was also enjoyable to test it. It was really a lot of fun to test as it simply remained true to its original design roots.
Yes, at least as far as aesthetics are concerned.
Absolutely. She possesses her. Slightly aged, yet unmistakably iconic and charmingly timeless way of standing right here. She's become somewhat taller, she's become somewhat thicker. But she's just simply grown up.
She has grown up and acquired additional features, and indeed you can clearly still recognize that it is unmistakably a Rancilio Silvia. Yes, but it's no longer just a single boiler. Instead, it's been upgraded to a dual boiler system with 2 vibration pumps, along with the ability to set a customizable pre-infusion. And yes, equipped with all sorts of advanced features and capabilities, it's distinguished by these functions, which undoubtedly make it much superior to the single-circuit model, naturally. And yet at the same time, if we categorize it by price, it's still an affordable, relatively affordable dual boiler, right?
Absolutely. I mean, in Switzerland, you can get them somewhere around 1700 francs. In Germany, I saw something like 13, 14, 1500. Around that range, although 13 is probably more like 14, 15, 16. So we Swiss are then on the same level as in Germany, more or less. And I mean, try to find a good heat exchange espresso machine for that price. Absolutely. And here you get a dual boiler that has a bit of the acoustics of a drum, but only if you knock on it, but you don't have to.
Directly back in carnival mode, even before the intro. Michel, before we really dive in, let's run through the machine. This will be a test video. As Kaffeemacher innen, we often make test videos, but we also make tips and tricks videos. If you haven't followed the channel yet, please go ahead and do so. You'll learn so much about coffee and we'll explore brand new machines together. And simultaneously, we make it our aim not only to test the machine, but also to genuinely find out. How can a machine perform optimally in your home environment? We actually did that quite some time ago with the Silvia, with the little one. We've done that with her as well.
We do it with each machine.
However, sometimes I notice that it's even better at figuring out how to best, and I'm thrilled about everything we're unveiling today.
Exactly, because we genuinely discovered so much information. So let's begin with the facts, like what features the machine is equipped with. It features a 1-liter steam boiler and an espresso boiler with a capacity of 0.3 liters. The entire machine weighs approximately 20 kilos. Additionally, the machine includes a water tank that holds about 2 liters, although we managed to fit 2.2 liters successfully.
Plus some hose stuff.
Plus the hose equipment. Yeah, that's somewhat of a disappointment.
On it.
Let's get straight to it. Exactly. It's 25 centimeters in width, making it relatively compact, 39 centimeters in height, and 42 centimeters in depth without the portafilter attached, which becomes 51 with the portafilter included.
I think it's a nice bit of info Gonzalo consistently finds for us.
Yep.
Because it's relevant for you all. Typically, the counters are about 50 deep, although sometimes they're around 60 deep. 60 typically. So would this be a specific type of machine where the portafilter doesn't really extend beyond the boundary of the countertop surface? Depending on precisely how far back you actually want to go.
Absolutely. I just feel like I went through that experience back in the old academy. Because we had those mobile tables in there that we would use in between. And it wasn't that deep. And then there were really courses when, exactly, then he walks past the machine and then the portafilter flies. That's just stupid. So what else do we have? We have a switchable, disengageable steam pouch. We can certainly tell a story about that too. Then we've got no volumetrics. We have only one button available. We are equipped with PID control, which lets us adjust the temperatures. That's quite a lot.
We can do quite a lot, especially for the price. Of course, we also bought this machine like all test machines. So we're telling you what we think here. But Michael, before we say anything else, I just noticed something. We've made an informative video about this new map or poster that vividly showcases the world of coffee. They're available here. I hope we don't mark the wall.
I'm just gonna slip away now.
So there's a video about it. It's thoughtfully designed to be displayed in your coffee corner area, and it actually marks all the various coffee regions across the world. It's not particularly large in size, I can barely see over the map, and at the same time these points always indicate unique and special countries. Especially for us, you can see the production quantity, you can clearly see where and when something is harvested. We've created a detailed video about it, and I'll share the link with you, but I'll put it aside for now. Then it's Silvia, lovelier in contrast.
So now that the crazy background is gone.
Sure, shall we discuss the aesthetics a bit more? Michael, you know something interesting I truly have this inherent sympathy for. The design. Are you aware of that as well?
It's plain.
No, it actually brings back fond memories of those classic old Volvos, and in fact, I once had a somewhat serious car accident in one of those old Volvos. And it was incredibly robust and highly stable. It was really quite good for me to have been sitting in it back then. That's my fundamental sympathy towards it, although I must emphasize that my Volvo does not sound nearly as tinny as that. But so, from an aesthetic standpoint, I honestly really think it truly is an old
Volvo format. Yeah, that's certainly true, but somehow in time Silvia is reminiscent of an old Volvo that simply, clings to it once more. It's also this peculiar drip tray with that little bitter thing embedded in it. It's once again one of those drip trays that just barely manages to earn the name, if it truly earns it at all when you really consider it.
Then focus on the drip tray because it deserves its own chapter.
Why?
I believe it definitely deserves its own chapter in every review. When I consider the machine as a whole, the most disappointing part of it, in this specific case, is truly the drip tray.
Certainly. And what I really struggle to understand the least is the fact that you've got this space between the portafilter and the cups, or cup holder, incredibly spacious. You could practically set up a camp in the space between.
That's more like an ideal little spot where your charming sparrows that visit the balcony frequently can enjoy a drink, almost as if it was custom made just for their tiny size and needs.
You could have simply made it about 5 centimeters taller.
Yes, or 10.
Yes. They really could have made it somewhat taller.
Here's the thing. Frankly, that's quite a bad joke. Now you can easily decide to skip the drip tray and let it go right onto the table. No need to always take it away.
Yes, it wasn't really quite as bad as it was with young Silvia. Well, she's a bit taller, after all. Indeed. It is likely just as deep, yet it's simply a bit more expansive in its appearance. So the transport's a bit, yeah.
We'll do that right away. You take a few shots and then we'll see how you handle this drip that I now have to get so worked up about the drip tray. Thought it was yours? I'm really baffled by this drip tray, but we don't need to dwell on it any further. You've seen it yourselves, it's really quite small, you practically have no capacity. And yes, of course, it's not really intended for you to fill it up excessively, but rather meant for emptying after each individual espresso extraction. You must not forget, it's not only what's still dripping, but it's also about what's still flowing through the relief valve. And then go back there too. That's a lot of water. Yeah, begin cleaning. Do the cleaning. Well, for cleaning, you'd always use a Tupperware or something like that underneath. But with the relief system, you can't just upgrade it, so just clean it once and then clean the drip tray again. That actually doesn't work here without.
Yes, but even with a rocket, you have to empty the drip tray at least once in between the cleaning process with the cleaning powder, and also when rinsing afterward with just plain water. That water reservoir, I have the distinct sensation. That's precisely the same one I encountered over 10 years ago at the Sevier.
Broader.
I am even skeptical if it's wider. Because the machine.
So, if he's really just a little taller, but the hose thing, you don't build a tank like this these days.
You don't need that anymore today. No. But it was also funny. Gonzalo was testing and then, by accident, one of the hoses wasn't fitted properly and it didn't draw water, which was a bit silly.
Well, not fitting the hoses in properly isn't too smart either.
Yeah, but you honestly have to properly fit them in just like this one time and then...
You have to bid them all down. You have to do them all once.
Yeah, okay, that's not really up to date anymore. I think the portafilter has gained visually and in terms of weight. Yes. It has become visually more appealing, but it is not well balanced in terms of weight distribution. He seems rather front-heavy to me, which makes him feel unbalanced.
It's genuinely quite challenging. Indeed, it's remarkably densely packed, which in truth is actually quite an advantageous aspect.
Yeah, but when you're making coffee later on, you really have to take just a little bit of it, like so. He's not well balanced at all. He's really heavy at the front and at the same time quite light at the back, which always causes him to push forward. I do think that's a bit silly. And with the... Yes, indeed, you juggling yet again.
It's kind of my balance check.
Ah.
No, it's unpleasant.
And these outlets are much narrower than, for example, with the Rancilio machines. I think that was the case with the Silvia, with the little one as well. Yeah, I just find it a bit unfortunate that you actually have a high quality portafilter, and instead of using the one from the larger machines, you're now also mocking the other one. Yes.
Michael, before we move on to the brewing and the different functions, we're still discussing the exterior, and we've just taken a good look at the portafilter. There is a bit more material available, like sieves and a tamper. How do those come into play? So there's this box with, you have to say now, functional. In my opinion, it really fits the machine well, and everything just seems to fit perfectly. The entire packaging is extremely functional and practical. It's all very functional and not excessively done. It's exactly like those films that you need to peel off at first use. When I compare it with the Profitec, you can obviously see that these details really mattered to them. It's like they understand you don't want to spend a lot of extra money, so the stuff is conveniently just placed in there, ready inside the plastic bag, done and dusted.
But the tamper is okay, right? It's not plastic since there's no plastic tamper, which is actually quite good. And then there's a blind sieve, basically like a rubber disc. I also find this approach fair enough, and additionally there are cleaning tablets included, which isn't bad at all in my opinion. I find that aspect somewhat difficult. Cocoa spoon, one sieve, and one cleaning, so it's all very, very functional and straightforward.
Moderate, the sieve is indicated as rather small almost, but still easy peasy. I sometimes find myself wondering if we we do indeed weigh differently. Here, yes, so it is officially a 14 sieve.
18 grams, very, very clear. I'll drink afterwards with the mummy, and I've taken 18 grams. I could have even taken 18 and a half, but I'm generally a fan of going for a little less.
Well, they grind coarser?
In Italy?
At Rancilio, it's particularly about the different types of hubs.
Okay, let's leave it. We usually give you about 18 grams with the standard 7 included.
How's the sieves?
Very solid. I find them really beautifully made. Look, they go straight down nicely.
We'll take a closer look at how exactly they're all punched, laser cut, or perforated. That's another subject entirely, a matter we want to explore further. But hey, nice. I think those are the most important things to express, Michael, right? For the time being, yes. Can you just quickly tell me in detail, how is it going? What's the current status on those notorious and infamous sharp edges?
Well, the thing is, it's folded very neatly at the top, and overall that genuinely feels pretty pleasant.
Clever of me.
Right, yep, and there's...
You can hide it?
You can hide us a little bit there. And then there are these transitions.
That's mainly just... Is it the same on both sides?
No, the gap measurements are 1 millimeter really is equivalent to 2 millimeters.
I mean, have I turned it off now? It's simply not, it really isn't even, they really ought to simply stay together.
Yeah, then it doesn't hurt at all. It's like, it's right on the edge. In the front, it's good, it doesn't hurt me at all.
To be honest, I don't find it sharp at all. Even when I'm here, did I accidentally press something wrong?
No. To be fair, I honestly think that she just went ahead and weighed the item.
I find that in this case, everything is really fine, so that's not an issue at all.
I just find the transitions a bit silly, but otherwise...
I'd say we have certainly seen quite different things before in the past. And Michael, I would say that was really all about the exterior. Now we're getting to the core task of the machine, and that's when it gets really interesting. Now we're moving into the area where the machine truly shines, which is making coffee, brewing delicious coffee. Consistency in temperature and current behavior. That's what the next chapter covers.
Sure.
Switch on.
She indeed set a truly impressive and remarkable benchmark, and we were quite taken aback by it. I'll just provide a little background information, as you all surely know if you're regularly watching our videos.
Above all, the phrasing, let me just briefly elaborate a bit. What did you do now?
So the situation was as follows. Gonzalo and I carefully unpacked the machine and carried out some tests on it.
I have about Gonzalo in December 2022.
Back then in December 2022, I then told Gonzalo, just take another measurement without the boiler. It's particularly important for us to determine exactly how much electricity the machine uses when the boiler is switched off. Later on, we thoroughly examined the manual to figure out the steps to turn off the boiler. And I couldn't find it, not consciously at least. So I did some Googling, watched several YouTube videos, and still I didn't manage to figure it all out. And then the tests were finished and I was quite surprised, because the machine fundamentally used very little electricity.
But you might also say, until then, you hadn't frothed milk either. You would have definitely noticed something.
Otherwise, we would have noticed something. Then we were at about 0.13, 0.14 kilowatt hours, kilowatts per hour. That's right, we do it before Umart, otherwise Toby will come again.
Mean Tob?
Yeah, not just Toby. That was like, oh wow, super incredibly low power consumption.
I also find it positive. I think it is, regardless of the fact that you'll now say the boiler wasn't even on, it's still great. Well, I still believe it's also a positive thing, even if you happen to know that the boiler wasn't actually on.
I mean, it's 0.03 plus or minus more than a thermoblock for brewing espresso.
That's great.
That's with the 0.3 liter little boiler. Perfect. And then
You had, just to put everything into perspective, already pulled out 5 double shots of espresso. Right, just like with the thermoblocks naturally and so on, truly top-notch quality. Then you came to realize that the machine actually has a function that requires the boiler to be turned on. It's quite essential to activate the boiler.
And I really found that to be incredibly cheeky. I'm not sure how deliberately Rancilio does that kind of thing. But I found it really incredibly cheeky that when I actually unpack the machine, the steam boiler is just not switched on by default. Great, because when it's flipped once, I don't need to worry about turning it off. Just one push is truly enough, and you only really need it when you actually need it. I usually didn't get any feedback here. Normally speaking, it is supposed to be always on, but in my case, it was unexpectedly switched off, which caught me by surprise.
Write in the comments like how it was for you when they arrived. For us it was off and they didn't ask me initially what are these buttons here. But rather directly went straight for the reference button and touch button, done.
And then I hadn't booked an espresso, I just wanted to quickly check how much steam comes out and turn this little wheel. And nothing happened. Then I pressed the steam button and naturally that's when it starts to warm up and that's when it really dawned on me, oh, it's actually the opposite way than I originally thought. I find that quite cleverly resolved because just like that, I inwardly wished for it. Being aware that it's a 1 liter steam boiler capacity. I knew it wouldn't just take 30 seconds because it would be super cool to say, boom, push a button, 30 seconds of steam.
No, takes time.
That's really not the case actually. It needs, during the test I conducted, the machine was already powered on and even then it took roughly about 7 to 8 minutes to completely heat up the steam boiler. That's simply because, of course, there's some heat being naturally generated in here and this boiler has effectively absorbed and retained that heat. And then it was relatively quick, I would say. We then ran a second test where the steam was already on, turned off and waited a day.
The machine was off, but it was set up so that when we turn it on, we would immediately activate the steam power or keep the steam boiler going directly.
Right, and then you need 11 minutes for everything. For the whole package.
And then the power consumption to wrap up the power chapter.
Ow, 0.24. Yep.
And with that we remained better than most dual boiler machines, surprisingly. This undoubtedly merits more thoughtful consideration and certainly deserves to have all of our full attention directed towards it. That's really well done, especially for a Volvo like that.
And this Volvo will arrive here in just 11 minutes. In those 11 short minutes, this Volvo will make you 2 espressos and 2 delightful cappuccinos.
Exactly. So that's now going to be the next chapter. The power connection is all sorted out. Heating behavior. We definitely wanted and felt the necessity to challenge that because naturally different experiences were had with the machine and the machine itself already states, I am ready earlier, right? And there are also. I have also come across videos and read texts where it said 5 minutes is not sufficient, so it is sufficient only for the machine to signal to you I am ready. Why?
Actually, after only 3 minutes, it already shows 93 degrees, but please, 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 please don't brew coffee then, because it's really not tasty. So you're brewing somewhere at 70 degrees. That would be on the borderline of a cold brew.
Yes, so we're definitely moving towards what could be called compromise cafes. We measured that as well. After 5 seconds, 5 minutes, we already ran our temperature curve and you can see it here. So you're definitely still quite a bit far away from that, yes.
Here's how it went. She starts her initial brewing process at approximately 70 and steadily works her way up to reach around 80 to 85. Second brew. For the third, we start deep but finish brewing around 293, and the fourth overshoots.
The fourth and fifth then go beyond the expected range. She's still in this phase where it feels like she's continuously heating up and the temperature keeps rising, going higher and higher, and eventually she overshoots the target temperature as well. That needs to be said. Some might say maybe the machine acts like that. No, but we will be addressing that shortly. Essentially, the machine is quite capable of achieving and consistently maintaining a nice, constant temperature. But certainly not while still in the heating phase, absolutely not after just 5 minutes. After 10 minutes, what?
After 10 minutes, we find ourselves in need when we have the experience that these 20 are sufficient, meaning not using the 25-minute protocol, but realizing that the machine heats up more quickly. That's usually the problem with portafilters. They are still too cold. That means there is a flush shot that takes 20 seconds to heat the portafilter. And then the first brew is genuinely plus or minus within the optimal range. That's really quite enjoyable and exciting. That's where you can grab your first coffee. If you also activate the steam boiler at the same time, from my experience, it's wise to simply wait patiently for a bit until this little blinking light from the steam just stays on continuously, and then do a heating shot for the portafilter 20 seconds, and then you can brew.
Great. So 10 minutes, 11 minutes, fantastic, and that's still less than half the duration of most FEMA brew groups that I usually review. And that's absolutely a strong statement, and you know, I must admit I actually quite enjoy it when a machine happens to fail like that.
And then we discovered something else, and I found that to be extremely fascinating and intriguing.
Exactly, we then did the stress test.
Right, we'll proceed into the WBC protocol. During our classic 25-minute protocol, you'll notice that sometimes it operated at a warmer temperature, while at other times it was cooler. Nevertheless, it steadily and gradually works its way upward, maintaining a consistent progression throughout the entire process.
So it's overshooting in terms of temperature. Target temperature is set. What did you actually set? 93? Yes, 93 degrees exactly. We are fluctuating around that point now. She seems uncertain, so I need to go ahead and reheat it. Then a lining is underneath, and then the next one is over it.
And the really great thing about it is that we're currently implementing the WBC protocol for all dual boilers. And the WBC protocol is, first of all, the machine must have been running for an hour, so it has to be really hot. Begin brewing at 10, then 5-2, and finally at 1-minute intervals. And ultimately, you'll be waiting for another 10 seconds, in addition to the 25 to 30 seconds needed for preparation, whether it's grinding, tamping, or any other task.
And the machine has an appropriate strength range because it requires a resting pause for optimal performance.
Certainly. And as a consequence of what we've uncovered, we now have come to understand that they genuinely tend to doesn't appreciate it when things proceed too quickly. We went through the same protocol once more, this time incorporating a 1.5-minute waiting period, as we effectively observed that within this range of 10, 5, 2 1-minute brewings, that's honestly pretty intense and really quite extraordinary.
And I find that to be a truly fascinating piece of insight indeed. So if the rhythm is quicker than 1.5 minutes, then quite frankly, it really doesn't suit this machine very well at all. And if you allow her 1.5 minutes between each of the shots, she becomes really impressively consistent. And you can clearly see it here. So these initial ones, I think the first 6 references in the profiling where she indeed has more time available, they all turn out to be exactly the same. I really find it quite an interesting topic how the curve actually behaves within the curve. We can just take a quick look at it, but the consistency is simply there. That's really amazing.
That's really incredible and amazing. We took that insight, recognized its value, and integrated it back into our regular protocol. Consequently, we decided to stop the 25-minute protocol entirely, but rather we employed the 11-minute or 10-minute protocol.
8-minute protocol. So we actually measured the chaos thoroughly, but the underlying essence is indeed confirmed.
Quintessence confirmed. It was still really quite amusing to watch. She has those initial 2 or 3 brews where she rises a little bit, and then she just draws a perfectly straight line. And the other one, really as a rule for at home, a few minutes isn't much, so you'll still have to serve. So 1.5 minutes for 2 espressos and a double shot, including grinding and all that. Steaming milk, you can do everything in parallel since this is a dual boiler. It's independent, not an issue at all. Just think, if you, for example, have guests at home and need to make 6 espressos, then extract the espressos, place them on saucers, put a spoon on top, and bring them to your guests briefly. Cheers or whatever it is people say, I don't know. Then get back to the machine and you'll find yourself reaching 1.5 minutes quite quickly. And then it's really impressive.
Fantastic. Michael, that's an exciting insight for cross-references, but could you summarize it again? I am home alone. I want to prepare my double shot. Yes. I'm switching the machine on freshly. What should I do now?
You might consider following an 8-minute routine where you simply declare, wait for 8 minutes, then thoroughly rinse the portafilter for about 20 seconds, make the coffee, brew it, and it tastes wonderful.
All right, so now I'm definitely here.
One's on when there.
We'll note that down and I'll also include it in the blog article, which you'll find linked below. Wait 8 minutes.
Steam for 11.
Steam 11.
Or just as long as the steam.
After 11 minutes, I'm able to start the steam and feel it once, ensuring that the portafilter, which is this really massive piece of equipment, is thoroughly and properly warmed through. And then you pull the espresso and you're well on your way to getting it right. So I must say, hats off, good job to the Rancilio Silvia X Pro machine. I mean, we are Pro X. We're used to quite a bit from the little sister when it comes to temperature surfing. This definitely represents a different kind of league now. It was able to do that, of course.
Previously, it was already making espresso and continues to excel at it. It's equipped with 2 distinct vibration pumps, one specifically for steam and the other for the coffee boiler. Truly, it's a real pleasure and an enjoyable experience to use this machine.
Michelle, you're saying that so optimistically about the espresso, she can, yeah. I would still say you really need to prove it once again now. That's exactly the reason why we're making espresso now. Sir,
I keep on...
I appreciate you taking care of the stirring process. Then last time I made such a mess again. Yeah, nice. I finished editing the video about this coffee yesterday. And you made mommy, right?
I made mommy.
And I find it so fascinating, this history, this country, the people, and also his work as a pioneer. I didn't know any coffee from Guinea before I tried Mami. And fine Robusta, fine Canafora anyway, and now this is a 100% Robusta roasted as espresso. You pulled it quite long and I find it incredibly sweet with such a wonderfully dense texture.
He turned out slightly too long now, amusingly enough.
Amusingly.
So it was now 27-28 seconds.
Want it brief?
Well, for the extraction time, I prefer it around 25. The thing is, so 2 things. First, if you're used to our appas and dry spits grind size, definitely switch to a finer setting. And the second thing is, I just find the coffee awesome at a 1:2 up to an absolute maximum of 1:2.25 beverage ratio.
So, and this is just a very heavy coffee. Lots of texture, lots of density. And very toffee-like, yes.
And remarkably sweet with those rich chocolatey hints, yet it feels just like...
Pre-infused?
I didn't brew with pre-infusion, so first time.
Top.
No question. Espresso is super fun, really delicious, consistent, and enjoyable. Exactly. We would be presented with the opportunity to carry out a pre-brew phase that can last for a duration of up to 6 seconds.
I certainly still wouldn't do that with the coffee. I don't need. Totally separate topic, we'll have to adjust that again. The corresponding extraction behavior of Robustas, but we can turn that on. How does that work? So it's not a second pump, and the pump doesn't kick in either.
The pump won't start.
The machine comes with a total of 2 pumps, but just one is utilized for pre-brewing.
Right? Well, you can also hear it when you turn on the pre-brewing, you press a button, and you basically hear nothing. But you can hear the valve, and the brew head is located up here, that is the brew group. And then a small amount of water gradually flows, gently dripping onto the coffee grounds. And then, only after the mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 seconds, the actual real pressure finally starts.
You can easily adjust it, and we carefully manage here how long this will take. Water wetting time, actually, how long it should run, maximum 6 seconds, and then the pump kicks in. And after that, you'll need to add your extraction time right on top of it.
Right, but you also have to keep in mind with the Vibra, it really needs its 6 or 7 seconds to reach full pressure. Sure, and this applies to the pre-infusion as well. Essentially, you're extending the extraction more towards the final stages. Overall, engaging in pre-infusion isn't something negative for the quality of your coffee.
No, it helps.
A genuine positive factor for the coffee.
What is the effect of pre-infusion? Our goal is to evenly moisten everything initially. We genuinely want, so you can envision it like this, essentially. Dry coffee, which naturally has a tendency to resist water. He's not really open to taking in new water, he's actually quite water repellent. When the coffee grounds have been pre-wet, they're primed to absorb new water more effectively. This process significantly enhances their extractability and permeable nature, allowing for a richer flavor extraction and a smoother brewing experience. And those dry spots that are still visible even after 4, 5, or 6 seconds have passed tend to remain a bit of an issue. Especially when you have certain areas that are wet and others that remain dry, it's fairly dangerous, as these dry spots tend to repel water once more, just like how dry coffee often behaves in nature. And with that, you then have a potential risk of channeling. In reality, moistening is beneficial because you have considerably less channeling. It's really vital to take note of this when adjusting the grinder settings. Generally, you should aim to go wetter with pre-infusion, finer. Go finer and wetter, and then you have a higher extraction. That's actually positive too. Higher extraction is always quite interesting with good coffees. Emphasis on truly good coffees.
I've learned from you that ground coffee beans are naturally hydrophobic. They repel water, and at the point when we begin this preparation process, we have the potential to break through that. Or rather, prepare the coffee like, attention, you're getting water now. You don't need to reject it, but you need to let me in. And basically, it would be more reasonable to do it for a longer time.
Making sure that everything is completely and thoroughly soaked through, that's truly the main theme or point we're emphasizing here. Otherwise, one part of it says yes, go ahead with the water, but the other part says no, please not yet. First, I want to be softly hydrated. And that is essentially the issue at hand. That means I think it's quite sensible. That's why I find the vibration pumps more interesting. Because the full water load doesn't hit all at once and pressure isn't applied immediately. And that is essentially quite great. I just don't understand why exactly this here is so...
Only our 6 seconds are available, yes. So it wouldn't really be a bad idea at all if it were extended to 10 seconds now. That would also help, because then we can really assume that after about 8 to 10 seconds, our 18 grams in the portafilter are truly all wet. I think it's exciting, and I would just say, before we move on to the cappuccino, let's try the same grind size again and see what happens with 5 seconds of preparation.
Now interesting, you didn't adjust it finer, yet he still ran slower, right? Yeah, I would have expected him to run faster. That could be due to inconsistent work, of course.
Okay.
That could, of course, also be considered a twist of fate, or it might simply turn everything completely upside down. Yes, maybe it's a good idea to just do things differently for a change.
I find it fascinating. Yes, those are my spots for once. I think I didn't hear correctly. So thrilling, I truly find it to be... With the vibration pump, it genuinely builds up the extraction process quite dramatically until it fully runs through properly at the end. And during the pre-infusion phase, I really strongly felt like it sped up even more, starting with drip, 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 and then flowing smoothly before it truly shoots through. Yeah, but that still aligns well with what I was hoping to see. Yeah, but it noticeably took longer for it to finally come out. And
how he got out, Michael, more acidity than before. Yes, why for me now, I find now not at all such robust types of... I won't say that I wished for something sweeter with the Robusta, honestly. Exciting. Very exciting. Hey, you can do it, you can experiment with Rumpa, we'll do a bit of that too. And then more specifically working with both lighter and darker coffee roasts. I can simply tell you that in general, I recommend using pre-infusions, especially with lighter roasts. With darker roasts, I usually find that it doesn't really add anything, contribute in any way, or lead to an improved result altogether. That's been my experience, but it's definitely a topic to revisit. What might also be worth pointing out, Michael, is that we mentioned the temperature curve remains very consistent if we adhere to these 90 seconds. What is striking, however, is how long it takes for the temperature to really be there. Well, we have a long ramp-up curve. I'd say almost half the time we're not yet at the temperature. We tend to brew just slightly lower.
Exactly. And yet it's still tasty.
Yet we liked coffee.
We have always enjoyed very good coffees. Maybe it's also an indication that you might. Now be able to take things to a higher level, if you choose to. But we can certainly do that too. So, you can also focus on the coffee. And we've got them now set to 93 as the standard setting. That's what we've taken away once more.
And it was absolutely precise, so we had no offset at all. Yes, that's worth mentioning. So we didn't have to adjust anything. It came like that and was out of the box. Delicious. At the top level.
We definitely need a cappuccino.
Well, I'm curious to see how you handle it today, because dealing with Canephora is definitely a different story. It's never such a nice brown blanket.
Yes, it's just slightly more marbled.
So, a marbled cappuccino, please. I notice you've acquired an assistant specifically for frothing the milk.
Of course, when he eventually makes his way back again.
I really just need towel here, guys.
Exemplary.
Can I do that on the machine, or how does it work?
Yes, it's a dual boiler. Go ahead. If at some point coffee comes out, then you can even draw something. Maybe no coffee will come.
No coffee. That's enough for me.
Enough for you? Yes, we have to show you well. Right. I got help today. Ben's the cameraman. And Felix shows how he foams with the Sevilla.
He's actually doing it quite well already. Yeah, it is not the first time that he is foaming milk, since he is the head of our gastronomy, and he picked it up from Dario just like I did. When I foamed milk, Dario already still went to kindergarten. And how is it, Felix? Not so nice though. Otherwise everything's going fine and not too fast, but you really have to say. Especially since Felix handles big gastro machines every single day of his life, the rolling phase is not so good and it is in the lower limit. But it works, I would say. Maybe lower the pincher a bit.
You just need to tilt it a little more.
Tilt. Yes, but the trail. It's quite borderline.
How long does it take to shut down?
Yeah, because if you pull out too fast, you'll get those big bubbles in there.
Yeah, you don't pull it out, you learn that in class.
That's pretty much like the El Marzocco GS3. It also has such a long afterflow. Yes.
She did. So, now you get Mami for drawing. Have fun.
Would you like me to take a passport photo of you? The creamer is Hisi. Well, it's honestly quite bad, isn't it?
That you'd really manage to break it. Is there still enough space left for the whole face to fit in?
Sure, for the face, it's always enough. Just hit the nose.
Felix, I truly appreciate all your wonderful efforts. Did you manage to blow out the steam wand?
Yes, he sometimes has a guest. He did really pretty okay, didn't he?
He did okay, yeah.
This pearl pattern is kind of...
Yeah. You know, that's really the difference. I mean, in our courses, we can just show what's currently going on because we have as much time as we want.
He has to deliver.
And Felix has to deliver.
In catering, it needs to be efficient. Cappuccinos, it really looks good, cappuccino. Very caramelly, huh? Yeah, and malt.
Very malty. I absolutely agree with Felix on this one. It foams nicely, and although it could use a bit more strength, it's perfectly fine as it stands now. It's enjoyable and fun.
It's at 125, and that's the maximum limit, so you can't really get any more out of it.
Nah, but what I'm saying is, that's fine by me. I find the comparison to a gas boiler quite strong, considering the move from a 1-liter boiler to a small thermoblock, but yeah, that's how it is.
Alright, my dear Michael, this here is the Rancilio Silvia Pro X, and we can certainly conclude that it's a genuinely fascinating machine, a dual boiler machine, especially remarkable when you take its price range into account. That performs a few commendable functions, consuming relatively little electricity, considering it reaches operating temperature quite quickly in approximately 10 minutes alongside the boiler, which is impressively efficient. Other dual boilers should try to match that first, which certainly speaks well for this machine. If you give it 1.5 minutes between brews, then we have a wonderful temperature consistency that actually maintains itself, and with that you could also do mass production. In this video, you provided helpful tips on how to get the very first espresso up to the proper temperature in just about 8 minutes by flushing it thoroughly, and I believe that this covers the most essential details and aspects about the machine. Or would you add anything else? Nope.
Somehow I went back to brewing before we left portafilters in. These spouts are all ready.
Very, very narrow. Yes, it's really hard and quite difficult to spray the coffee into 2 separate cups with it. There is always the risk, especially when the coffee kind of curves or zigzags a little, that it flows over the edges. What you haven't talked about yet, which actually surprised me quite a bit and what I really don't like at all, is this creature made of plastic here? Yes.
No, that fits into the overall picture perfectly. Look here, that's a black plastic lid. And this is black rubber plastic, that's black plastic, that's also black plastic. That's surely the same material as this.
All right, it's a line. It's a line, and now I really think there's actual heat behind it, whereas before there was just a plain black plastic cover. Yeah.
But at least I don't burn myself here like in a FEMA brew group.
Yes, absolutely. Even so, this is another machine where I would say that I think it's definitely quite good. I believe it makes sense, and I think it's also quite enjoyable to use at home. Nonetheless, I would strongly recommend that you should test this machine, give it a try, and definitely work with it. Visit a nearby local dealer, drop by, and see if it's indeed the right machine for your needs. We've now presented you with detailed information from our side, and it's up to you to properly organize it, explore further tests, and create a comprehensive understanding of the Rancilio Silvia X Pro machine. Enjoy getting to know it thoroughly. And take care of yourselves, drink good coffee, bye, and see you soon.